You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped an amazing episode with Steve DC and James Foster of Strig Empire. There's this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
What is up, good people? Yes, this does sound weird because I'm standing outside in sunny California next to a water slide type deal. I'm at NAMM on the last day. So I'm recording this intro from our Airbnb here in Anaheim. So yes, it does sound a little different. And yes, those are birds in the background. But welcome to this episode. Today I'm talking to Nick Loux from the JHS Show. Yeah, way overdue. I'm super glad to have him on. He's a very interesting character, and we get into all sorts of things. We get into his musical backstory, and it's a deep one, and one that I definitely relate to, and a lot of you are going to as well. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. I'll have some NAMM updates. I might record a NAMM breakdown, maybe with some of the other guitar podcasters. We're kind of talking about it. Maybe I'll get Scott on here. We'll see. We'll see how that shakes out, but definitely going to have some sort of NAMM updates, whether it's on here or on the Chasing Tone podcast. It was an interesting show, though I didn't get to see as much being glued to the booth as I would have liked to. Might do a little more walking around today. I'm literally recording this right before we hop in our Uber to head to the show for the last day. So yeah, we'll see how this shakes out. But thank you everybody for listening, and that's probably enough blabbering. Let's get into this episode with Nick Loux from the JHS Show. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland. With me today, I have a long overdue guest, Mr. Nick Loux from the JHS Show. What's going on, dude?
Nothing, man. Just this. This is what's going on.
That's the only thing?
It's all we're doing. It's all I'm doing right now.
I love it. Thank you for the attention. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It means a lot to me.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, should be a good time for sure. I think the best place to start for you, because you know, if anybody follows you directly on socials, they will realize that you do lots of things. You play lots of instruments, You sing, you do all kinds of things. I want to go way, way back when you were just a young little boy.
Okay.
And when you first started picking up instruments and getting into music, and how that led you to being Nick from the JHS Show. I want to get the whole story.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a musical family. My dad plays guitar. My dad actually works at JHS. He's right on the other side of that wall.
Oh, whoa, that's cool.
So grew up in a musical family, always watching my dad and my aunt and uncle. They were also musicians. They were always playing together, and it was just kind of always around. And so I'm trying to think, I think it was when I was 12 or 13 was where it was really okay, I want to learn how to play guitar. And that's honestly, I think the honest motivation is just yeah, that's what you do. My dad plays guitar. I'm going to learn how to play guitar. Why wouldn't I? That's super cool. And my dad at the time too was playing little gigs and solo gigs and stuff. And so it was just wow, this is cool. Just watching my dad play. And so, when I think I was 12, my dad got me a baby Taylor and started teaching me chords, and, with varying amounts of committed practice, I started picking it up and stuff. I don't really feel I thrived in the like experimenting and just like playing, and when I would get bored I would go ask him for new stuff. But I learned like the key of G, which is all you need, and and started learning how to play some songs, started like ripping off riffs where it'd be like, oh, that's kind of Smells Like Teen Spirit except just sort of different.
Right.
He would my dad's always been like buying and selling gear like my whole life. I've seen him go like full digital, full analog, just a pod, like all like literally he's still selling and buying new gear. I make fun of him for it all the time, but like he would set up a little rig for me and I'd play electric sometimes and just like kind of fool around. I remember, I think it was like the first real music where I was like, oh my gosh, like music can sound like this, like outside of like Christian rap and like, different like Christian bands that I was listening to at the time. Like my dad bought me U2, Joshua Tree, and I believe Octung Baby, and then the Cranberries. I think the record's called If Everyone Else Is Doing It, Why Can't We? It's the one with like Linger and Dreams on it. And those records were like, I was like, oh my gosh, like music is really cool. It was definitely like a new level of like, oh my gosh, like music is so interesting. And I remember that was when I like realized Bullet the Blue Sky wasn't a POD song.
Okay.
The first time I ever heard Bullet the Blue Sky was POD's cover, which rips, by the way. I like non-ironically still like POD. So
I remember POD the first time. I have the weirdest memory, and it's so vivid for some reason. I was looking because I was the one that took the recycling out as a kid.
Yeah.
And at the time, you had to divvy up the recycling here. So now you just throw all the recycling in the same bin. Yeah. At the time, you had to cardboard goes here, and that was my job.
Yeah.
And anything that involves organization, I hated with a passion. So of course, this took extra long because I hated it so much.
Yeah.
And I was folding up a Pepsi box.
Okay.
And they were advertising different acts on the side of these Pepsi boxes for a while. But it wasn't like a picture of them or anything you'd really remember, or you probably wouldn't normally remember. But for some reason, they had the POD logo on there. And I don't even remember what the description was.
Yeah, that's so funny.
It was the first time I saw it. And then I was like, I wonder what this POD is. And like, remember reading the description about them blending rap and rock. And I was like, oh, you mean kind of like Linkin Park? Oh, weird. Interesting. And then I heard them later. And it's just a strangely vivid memory.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I know they were one of like the first bands I like really got into. But I feel like, which is strange because I like don't make anything close to that kind of music.
I understand.
Or have the ability to make that kind of music. But it was kind of a formative band. I listened to them all the time. But yeah, so, my dad would I brought up Bullet the Blue Sky because my dad was like, well, the slide part on there is actually pretty easy. You just go, meow.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, cool. I can learn a riff. I didn't know who the Edge was, but I was like, I can learn an Edge riff. That's cool. And kind of like parallel in that time, I also got really interested in playing the drums because of the movie School of Rock. I will go to my grave saying like that movie might be the reason I have my job today. Like
that movie is hugely impactful.
Yeah.
Like massive.
I think it's more impactful than people would like to admit because it's not like a cool story. Like I heard the Beatles and then I decided, like, you know what I mean? There's it's like people tell their like when they found music story and it's like, oh yeah, the first time I ever heard When the Levee Breaks. Like that's a cool example. But the more truthful example is that Jack Black is the reason why I can play drums and guitar today.
Jack Black in through that movie was a lot of kids' first introduction to Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
So
same. Yeah,
I
like
think it still technically holds true.
oh yeah, for sure. So like I feel like that movie was in some because it's like it's the perfect combination. You're like it's good music, kids are playing everything, so you're like you see yourself in that, and you're like
hmm
it was such honestly I want to like write an essay about that movie at some point because it truly like what I think really caused so many people to go like, "Oh, I see," like so many kids to go, "I see myself there. I want to be able to do that." Like a kid can play a guitar solo, a
Like
kid can play a
what?
drum solo. Like I
hmm
remember kind of trying to learn the drum solo, one of the drum solos in that movie, and it was like, I don't know, it just gave me permission to be like, "Oh, I can do this. This isn't just a
hmm
grown up thing."
Totally. Well, and I was sort of like you. I was surrounded by it.
Yeah,
My dad played
totally.
also, and I knew lots of people in bands. And I knew people in bands that weren't that much older than me,
Yeah, yeah.
but still, it felt like a little bit of an unattainable thing because
Right.
I'm sitting back here strumming an acoustic, being like, "This doesn't sound anything like I want it to sound like.
Yeah.
What's wrong?" And that was kind of the start of the gear obsession for me because I realized, oh well, if you want to play like really heavy metal stuff, you probably aren't going to do it on a Takamine most of the
Yeah,
time,
yeah, sure, sure.
so,
Yeah.
so, but that movie was massive, and I wouldn't I don't think it's probably hyperbole to say that there's a lot of us that could say our jobs could directly tie back to that movie,
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, no, unashamed. Like School of Rock was so big, was such a big
hmm
influence for
I
me.
saw it, I don't know, 6 times probably,
Yeah.
maybe more in theaters.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just went back and back and back, and I was just
Yeah.
like, this movie's so great,
Oh, it's
so
so
great.
good. So yeah, I started taking drum lessons after I think it was after that movie came out because I just thought the kid who played the drums, I was like, he's so cool. He did the spiky hair thing where you grab each individual hair strand, and I started doing that, and
We
like,
all did it.
dude,
Yep,
it was I looked good, man. It was a
I
good
believe it.
look. I
I
wish I
believe
could
it.
still do that hairstyle now. There's a reason I wear hats all the time. Um, but yeah, so I started taking drum lessons from a guy like at my school. Like he was just like a high school student. He played drums in like the worship band. And so I started taking lessons from him and saved up for a drum kit. And then it was like, cool. Now I like playing drums. So I played a lot in church with my dad growing up. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth was just
hmm
playing in church. I mean, it's like literally built-in practice. It's like once a week playing drums, actually having to learn songs and stuff. So that was definitely another really formative time for sure.
hmm And that also forces you, like, it's one thing. I played drums in my room by myself to overcomplicated songs that I really shouldn't have been
Yeah,
playing
sure. Yeah, yeah.
versus playing drums with a group of people
Mhm.
and trying to make something cohesive. It's a very different
Oh,
experience.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely was, like, a hugely formative, and I'm very grateful for that because, yeah, it taught me to play simply and just to, like, just do what the song needed, um,
hmm
and I think it taught me early on to, like, not overplay.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't ever figure that out with drums.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but it sounded terrible. I did a really bad job. That's why I don't play them anymore. But so when you got, obviously you developed this passion for drums, but you were still playing guitar,
Mhm.
I assume.
Yeah.
What did you do after that once you got a little older, started, you know, trying
Yeah.
to make it for yourself out in the world? What did music what role did music play at that point in your life?
Yeah. So like into my later teens, I was still playing in church a lot and like, dabbling. Like guitar never was centralized, but like I knew it enough. And I feel like
Mhm.
throughout middle school and high school, I was like around other guitar players who were better than me. And I started to like become more and more interested in like how can I play that or whatever. Honestly, the pattern is gonna be I've seen a lot of movies that like most of my big moments where I took a jump was like I saw a movie. And so
I
the
understand.
next movie I think in the list of movies that made me go like I kind of want to play guitar a little bit more was, and this is like a little embarrassing, but August Rush was like was another. Do you know that movie?
I don't even know that
Okay,
movie.
so August Rush, like the quick pitch is it's about a kid who's like a savant at guitar, but he's playing open, so it's like an open D, I believe, and it's actually no, it's Dadgad, and Khaki King is like I think she plays a ton of it,
Okay.
and does a lot of the like tappy like a lot of like slappy stuff, and so
Yeah.
I figured out how to tune my guitar like that in that open
Mm-hmm.
sound, and I was just like, I'm just gonna pretend that I can do that. So I would like watch the movie and like kind of like, okay, he's kind of doing this, and it's funny because in that scene, I think it's Khaki King. Uh, there might have been another man as well, because I do remember the scene where it cuts to this kid. He in the movie August is just he's like an 8-year-old boy, but then they'll cut to his hands and it just looks like adult hands for like a second. And it's
Right.
so funny. Like it's so funny. And it's like when you're a kid, you don't notice it at all. But then as an adult, you're like, hold on a second, that's a grown adult's hands right now.
At the very least, it's not an 8-year-old.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not an 8-year-old. And so that was like a big one. And that was just another one where it was kids playing music. It was kids playing music really well. And so that was like really huge for me. And that got me playing guitar. I would, there was a lot of, he would plug the guitar into an amp in a delay pedal.
Mhm.
And the delay was like a big part of the sound. And I had a Line 6 Spider at the time. And my dad's, what was it? I wish I could remember the guitar. It'll pop into my head like in the middle of our conversation at some point.
Just shout it out like,
yeah,
Ibanez.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was it might have been an Ibanez. I don't think it was though. It was like this black shiny guitar, and I would plug it in, and there's a little delay effect on the Line 6 Spider, and I would do that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And so on my lunch break in middle school, I would go into the auditorium and play, and you know, my buddies would be like, oh look, it's little August Rush out there or whatever. And I was like, but it's so fun and so cool. And so that was another that kind of got me like, okay, guitar's actually like there's a lot to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And then in parallel, my dad bought a Pro Tools rig. So he bought, I don't know if you remember this, but like Pro Tools, they had some of their own, they probably still do. I don't know if they do as much. They had their own like interface, like brand or something.
You had to use that stuff.
What was it called? I wish I could.
I can't.
Do you know what I'm talking about though?
I do. At the time though, that was the only way you could use Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Was by using their hardware.
Yeah.
And that was that way until, I don't know, maybe 7-ish years ago, I feel like.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but yeah, so he's got a Pro Tools rig, and I kind of figured out how to like Pro Tools was a little over my head. Flat.
I was trying to Google it real quick.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what it's called.
It's a deeper dive.
When my dad bought a MacBook, it came with GarageBand, and this was when I was probably like 11. This is like I'm going back in time a little bit, and I figured out like the loop libraries, and I would just make little jams out of the loop libraries, you know. And I
100%.
love it. I love when I hear one of those loops from like the early 2000s. There's a few like guitar loops that like I'll still hear every now and then, and like somebody's old YouTube video, and I'm like, I know what that's a GarageBand loop. I know that one. I use that one all the time. That was my first experience like composing music, because it was like, oh cool, I didn't need to know how to like play. I could just take these bits and be like, ooh cool, and then there'll be a drum breakdown in this one, and I'll just take everything out. So when my dad got his Pro Tools rig, flash forward to when I was like 14, I was like, cool, like I'll figure out how to make this interface work with GarageBand so that I can like make stuff and not feel like I want to like throw myself off a building, because Pro Tools will make you feel like that sometimes.
Absolutely.
To this day. And I actually use it all the time. But so I started recording as well. And it was like, that was sort of like, oh, cool. Now I can kind of like record a little bit. And that was starting to happen at the same time. I remember like starting to record little guitar instrumental pieces. So August Rush, and then there's another movie.
I'm ready for it. Maybe I know this one.
The movie Once.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That movie started making me go, maybe I could write a song, because that whole movie is just like based around songs.
I love that movie so much.
I haven't seen it in forever. I want to watch it again and see if it still holds up. But that was another movie.
I just saw Glenn and Marquetta live this last year, in the fall. One of the best shows I've ever seen. You have to go see them,
dude,
if they come near, because they sound. It was probably the best sounding show I've ever heard in my life. They sounded amazing. So highly recommend. But sorry, go ahead.
No, so that movie came out and I was like, dang, this is really cool. And the just like the concept of like writing songs, it was like, oh, like I could write songs with words. I could write I could sing, and I didn't really sing that much. Like I felt like my younger brother was a way better singer than me when we were kids. I think he probably still is. He just doesn't really do it. But I was like, okay, like, so I kind of started writing a little bit, and like, just like songs, that just making little compositions and stuff. And I was like learning songs from the movie Once. And that was really big. And I also think there's something about Glenn's voice that was like really captivating, and just like how like gnarly it can get and how sweet it can get. And that juxtaposition was like very formative for me. And I'm trying to think like some of them. I think that was a big like moment of like, okay, I'm gonna like start trying to write songs. Like maybe I'm gonna start writing lyrics and playing around with that a little bit more.
That's such a big one. I'm sorry. Now I'm tracking, like, I think I'm just like a little bit older than you, because by the time Once had came out, I was resonating with like the fact that they were all going into the car and listening to the mix and stuff. And like, I remember doing that so distinctly with my friends, recording in our little tiny podunk studio. And then, we got to go check the car mix, and all piling in there and just like, and I was explaining to my wife, we're just recently married at the time. And I was like, no, the car mix is such a thing, because she loves that movie too. We watched it together. And she's like, why are they all in the car? I'm like, no, you totally have to do that.
No, the car mix is real. I feel like I'm trying to think of when I learned about. I think I learned about the car mix from my dad. He was working on some stuff with my uncle at the time or whatever, and it was like, you're supposed to go in the car and listen to it to see how it feels. And I was like, okay, cool. You're supposed to do that. And I mean, 100%. I still do that,
Oh yeah.
I'll never not do that.
You got to check the car mix, and now you have to check the iPhone mix.
Yeah, totally.
Which is less fun, to be honest.
Yeah. No, totally. But yeah, there's definitely this pattern of like movies. I think I don't know why. I think there's an aspect to it where I don't know if I knew how to like find like new music. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Like my dad, we had like a good playlist of stuff that we would go through. But like as far as like modern new stuff, I that was kind of coming through like people outside the or filtering from somebody outside my family to my dad and then to me, and being like, oh wow, this is cool. Um, and I mean, just keeping in mind, like, I was growing up in a time where you didn't have iTunes and like Apple Music, like
Right.
getting exposed to stuff, especially like like in my childhood, like in North Central Pennsylvania, where like Creed was the coolest thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know what I like, and that's if you're a huge Creed fan, freaking go for it. Freaking Take Me Higher. Still, it rips. You know what I mean?
I've come back around. I'll
Yeah.
be honest. I love it.
I think there's a reason why it was on the radio as much as it was. But yeah, so I feel like really when I started, I got into writing a bunch, playing guitar, and then the I feel like the next movie was It Might Get Loud. That was
Oh, yeah.
that documentary.
Great
That
documentary.
introduced me to the White Stripes, and that was like, oh, cool. Like Jack White's cool, and that I was always really drawn to like people who were. I was always really drawn to the like character who's like kind of just making it work with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even from School of Rock through August Rush once and It Might Get Loud, there's such a common thread of just like music being about just like making it happen with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's something like really deeply ingrained in the way that I do stuff even to this day. And like getting into Jack White was just even further, like almost to an absurd level of like, yeah, actually I on purpose play gear that's really hard to use because I like the tension. And that was such a fascinating concept to me because it's like, it's an encouraging message to see somebody who's like as talented and as like legendary say like, yeah, I just use this like crappy old K guitar or whatever and this like broken amp, and like, so whatever you have lying around your house is good enough. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's probably a big reason why I'm not like I don't get me wrong, like I have my moments where I like gear, but like I'm not like a real huge like gear head. There's like a few things I'll really nerd out about, but like people will be like, what kind of drums do you have? I'm like, I don't know, dude. They've got heads on them. I tuned them, and then they sound like drums. I don't have a place in my head for remembering like the types of gear I have. It's like, what compressor do you use? It's like, well, that's an easier one for me to answer. But so yeah, those are like just that there's a list of movies that were just like really huge. And then I think when I started working for JHS when I was like 16 or 17, and starting to work at JHS, and I started as being a builder. I think I was one of Josh's first employees, and that is where I learned about a lot of music.
I'm sure.
I learned like when I say most, like I would say like 90%, 95% of the music and what I know about music all is from working at JHS and listening to music all day long, building pedals. Like the first time I heard a Beatles record, like from top to bottom, was like at JHS.
Really?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services, and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
And it would, like, I remember, I think, I can't remember which song it was. It was, oh shoot. What's the Beatles song? I'm so embarrassed I can't remember it. It's the one with the drum. It starts with the drum part. It's at the end of the record, I think, and it's like the doom ga doom da ga doom ga doom.
Yeah, I'm not the Beatles guy to be asking this question, but I know what song you're talking about.
It's killing me that I can't remember. I feel like people are gonna roast me for this. I heard that and I was like, this was recorded when? And Josh was like, yeah, like this was like recorded in the 60s. And I was like, you're joking. This sounds so like so incredible. Like it like truly blew my mind. And you know, I learned about Spoon, I learned about Wilco, I learned about like just so many bands. And that was like, then that I feel like I started accumulating like musical resources. So that I started building a vocabulary of musicians in my brain. Now I'm like, it's like my algorithm is starting to build out of all these bands. I'm like, ooh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. This is really cool. There's a whole genre of like country music that isn't what I thought country was.
Oh boy, we could go off on that,
dude,
for sure.
Like so much of that, like, oh my gosh, it just like truly was like, I feel like that's a lot of people's experience with music exposure. It's like you don't really get exposed to that much music in a vacuum. Like it's kind of impossible. I mean, now it's easier because of Apple Music and algorithms and stuff. But it's like I've learned so much from just, you have to be around a ton of people, you know.
I had to read about bands. I would read about them in a magazine or in a book, and then it was kind of weird. I read this book, and it's a great read. I recommend it to anybody. Yeah. But it's called Our Band Could Be Your Life. And it's about a bunch of indie bands from, I don't know, I can't remember every band that's in it, but Black Flag was the one that I became obsessed with without hearing the band. Just by reading stories about the band. Yeah. Like, this sounds like something I must hear. Yeah. But I couldn't just pull up my phone and listen to it.
Oh, for sure.
So I started reading that in like remember it was 8th or ninth grade, but I read that book and I did it for a book report at school. I was like, well, I might as well read something I want to read,
Yeah.
right? And my English teacher at the time just happened to be a big fan of Black Flag. He's like, you've never heard the band? And
Dude.
I was like, no.
What a
And
cool
so
teacher.
he hooked me up. Shout out Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, dude.
He hooked me up with some Black Flag and some Big Black too.
Okay.
I don't know why. Those were both in the book. That was Steve Albini's band.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that
yeah.
he had his own band. I'm learning things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's been a part of a couple crucial entities. I think that might have been the first one that got a lot of notoriety.
Okay.
I can't remember for sure. But yeah, what else? Husker Du is in there. I can't even remember. And it was like Gorilla Biscuits, like all these bands that I had never heard. I'd seen on T-shirts and I'd never heard of, never actually listened to. And that book set me down this path of like, well, I just read about all of these different bands. I should now probably hear them.
Yeah,
since
dude.
I spent this much time with it.
But
it was a different time.
Yeah.
But in some ways I miss it. In some ways I don't.
For sure.
I really do like being able to just be like, who's that? Click.
Yeah.
But I also like shuffling through the record bins.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, I feel like that process of discovery is so interesting. I think what happens now, that's the downside, is you don't give certain bands enough time because of how much there is. Like, I think I have fallen prey to this as much as the next person, but like, it's that thing of like, when there's a time when it's like the CDs, the records you had, they were the only ones you had. And like getting another one was costly. Even when it was just iTunes, like you still had to buy a record. You were still buying a record. And so it was like, well, what's the record I'm going to buy this Christmas with the gift card my mom got me in my stocking? Like you really had to think about it. And so you would, when you bought something, like, and similarly, like I remember walking around mowing the grass with my little Walkman or whatever. And like, I played the same records like over and over again. And like now it's so
System of a Down toxicity didn't leave my Walkman for like a year.
Yeah. That record rips. Also, that was a new one in the last 3 or 4 years where I was like, I'm going to listen. I've never listened to System of a Down. I'm going to listen to it from top to bottom. I was like, this is good. I like this.
This is really good.
Yeah.
And again, like super different.
Oh yeah.
At the time.
Like cannot imagine a world where I could make a record like that. And it's not like, but it's just like, wow, that somebody did this. This is incredible. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So those times though, you'd get a record. Like I remember, I can't even remember. I did this with a lot of different records, but you'd get the CD and you'd open it up, put it on, and you just lay on the floor. And if they had lyrics, I was always hoping they had their lyrics because I'd just obsess over them and just read and read and read and look at all the details of the artwork and like, oh, I wonder why that's there. I wonder what thought process went behind this.
Well, totally.
It was a much more active experience than I think that's the big downside about now. Now it's like click the button, hear it, and there's no cover to open. You just look at the first art, and I do look at that, but not like I would have. So it's partially the ease of access, and I also think, unfortunately, not to be cliche, but it's all the distractions that we have.
Oh, for sure.
So we're listening on the phone, and then we get a notification on the phone, then we get another notification on the phone, and it almost takes away from the active experience of sitting down and listening to a record. And that's actually why I like vinyl so much, because it forces you to just pay attention to the one thing for a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think like, I feel like I listen to music like I've had conversations with like friends who are like it's like they listen to music. They're just casual music listeners. They're like, yeah, I just like, I just like listening to music is like, just like putting on a TV show. And I've always been like a little jealous because I'm like, what's it like to listen to a song and not be analyzing the snare tone? Like, what's that like? And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that like listening for the snare tone is like some kind of like is more elevated or anything. It's just like when you listen to music and you're making so much music, like you start observing songs for the parts, and sometimes like it's easy to like miss the whole or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think I listen, you listen to music so much of it, and over again, you're always finding like new little pockets of things. But I think that's the bummer of like the instant access is like, as much as I'm super grateful to be able to just like listen to whatever, whenever, and have an algorithm suggest things that actually I like sometimes. I don't get as much. I don't set as much intentional time to just sit with a record and listen to it top to bottom and like really
Mm-hmm.
take it all in. And also there's that aspect of like, I think records as a whole, like really good ones, are kind of alive, and you can develop a relationship with them in the sense that like the more you listen, the deeper your understanding and connection with them becomes. Um, because like there are bands that I love now that when I first heard them I was like, I don't really know if this is for me, and then it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, Radiohead was a good example. Like the first Radiohead record I ever listened to was In Rainbows, which is kind of a weird one, but like what and ironically it's not the weirdest Radiohead record, but I remember listening to that record in the car and just being like, it was one of those things where you're listening to it and it's like, when you smell a weird smell and you're like, oh, I can't stop smelling. Like, I want to just, what is that? I'm like, it's so curious. And then like the more I would listen to it, it was like, oh wait, I think I get it. Like it starts filling into the spaces in your brain. You're like, okay, I think I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, okay, now I'm a fan. Yeah.
One of the interesting ones for me, and this is like, I'm sure I'm far from the only person. I know I'm far from the only person to have this. I remember when my friends first started showing me Metallica. Now I had come from like,
Mm-hmm.
we listened to both kinds of music here, country and Western. That was
Yeah.
my upbringing to to a lot of degree. And hearing Metallica as one of the early bands that I was being introduced to, I was like, are we supposed to be talking about all this death and like the beast under the bed and like all this? Are we supposed to be like listen? And then I like look at like the kids at school that had Metallica shirts on. I'm like in 6th grade or whatever. I'm just like, it's got skulls and spikes all over it. Like, is this okay? Is this are these people fine? Like, and then it's hilarious to say that and like listen to what I listen to now.
Right.
It's just like, ooh. And what I write sometimes I'm like, oh, this is child's play.
Right. Totally.
But it's fun to go back and think about these things through the lens of taking our musical journey and talking about how this, because it really does, when you're talking about I wish I could just listen like a casual person sometimes, I totally understand that, because my last job I had before this was almost ruined because I didn't have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
they would just play the same songs on repeat all day long, every day, that I didn't really like at all, to say the least. The listeners know what I'm talking about, so I won't go down that tangent again. But I couldn't not listen to it. I don't have the ability to be somewhere where music's playing and not pay attention to it. It's a weird mental thing that I don't know if that'll ever break for a lot of us. I don't think it will.
Oh no, totally. There are times where I wish I could reattribute my ability to hear 0.5 seconds of a song buried in the sound of a crowd and know what the song is. I wish I could like trade that for a different skill.
Yes.
Like you know what I mean? Like math. That'd be
anything.
Just, like really or like I don't know, just like financial planning or something, like
right.
Like I can it's like it's like I might not be able to like lay out a budget without having a panic attack, but what I can do is I can sit in a crowded bar and hear 2 notes and be like, oh, that's Bruce Springsteen. Like you know what I mean? So but yeah, I know it's a funny like, reality, but I mean, but let's be honest, we love it. It's like,
Yes, no,
you know what I mean?
yeah, ultimately it makes us who we are in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we're just a bunch of weirdos. That's the reality of it. And probably most of the people who listen to this podcast can relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
But I want to take a few steps back.
Okay.
How did you get hired as one of the first employees?
Yeah.
And then now you're known as, like, for lack of a better term, like one of the other guys. You were the original other guy on the JHS show.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's become a crew of people.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it like seeing this unfold? Because you saw it from the jump.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people who see the show as it is now understands how it started and what it's become.
Yeah, totally. That Beatles song, by the way, was Tomorrow Never Knows. I'm just getting ahead of myself. People in the comments, I remembered it. I actually looked it up on my phone. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
But I digress. To your point, or to the question. Yeah, so like the way I got the job, or the way the JHS show started happening, was essentially, I was working as a builder for a really long time, and uh, kind of got moved up into like managing the assembly line. And we moved from Josh's basement to a building on Main Street here in our town, and then we moved to the building we're in now. And you know making videos for a pedal company was like, it's like Instagram was just starting to happen, and we started like, you know incorporating social media and stuff into our advertisements and the way that we would market and whatever. But zooming forward, Josh had been flying out to Chicago Music Exchange to do a lot of our pedal demos.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of got to a point where um you know we were on a trip for a gear expo, and we filmed some stuff while we were there. This is when like DSLRs were like just becoming a thing, and our general manager Steve was a wedding photographer at the time. He had a camera. We had a few artists come into our booth. He shot some footage of it, and Josh was like, "Does anybody know how to use iMovie?" And I was like,
Right.
"Me."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so besides music, growing up, I was making goofy videos with my friends, and so that was the other half of this, was learning how to make fun videos with my friends. And so I edited that stuff together, and eventually it kind of got to the point where we said, like, could there be a world where instead of Josh flying out every couple months when we do a release to film a demo, could we just do them in house? And so that was like step one of like creating a market or a media department.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going full time into media. Oh, dude, I can't remember what year it was. It's all blurred together. But we started making teaser trailers, and I think the first teaser trailer I ever worked on, or I ever did, was the Moonshine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, oh wow, we're doing teaser trailers. So that was like the intro into making videos for JHS, and I would do that in my own time at home. And um, eventually we were like, hey, we need to be making demo videos of our gear. We need to be making teasers, and we need to be making more content, because social media is becoming a bigger thing. Instagram is becoming more video compatible, and like there's more video features now with Instagram. So I jumped in full time, and basically Josh was like, he didn't tell me this at the time, which I'm really glad he didn't, because it would have given me a lot of anxiety. But he was basically like, I want to see how this goes for a year, and then we'll reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
So he was basically just like, make stuff for the internet. And so it was like figuring out, making like goofy little videos for JHS here and there, and everything was kind of a building block, like one step closer to getting to the show. So it was like, oh, I would make a little goofy video with a puppet playing somebody else's pedal, which was like a weird idea. Like, maybe we'll play some other company's pedal for a second. And then I started talking to Josh, like, hey, like, people make YouTube videos like TV shows. And he's like, people watch YouTube like that? And I'm like, yeah, a lot of people. Um, and I had gotten connected with a friend of mine in the industry had basically said like, hey, everybody in your industry is making videos wrong. You need to be making shows.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. You're gonna like what you find.
This is Krista Makes, guitarist and vocalist for Less Than Jake, and host of Krista Makes a Podcast, a songwriting podcast where every week I'm joined by an amazing guest to break down the writing, recording, and release of one iconic song from their career. In our giant evergreen back catalog of episodes, we've had rock legends such as Dee Snider and Huey Lewis, punk rock favorites like Mark Hoppus, Fat Mike, and Brett Gurewitz, and up-and-coming artists of today such as Liz Stokes of the Beths and Genesis Owusu. We've had guests from all genres and styles of music, and I guarantee that if you peruse our back catalog, you'll see several episodes that'll make you say, man, I gotta hear that. Whether you're a fan of music or a creator of music yourself, you'll take away a whole new appreciation for the songs you know and love. Krista Makes a Podcast is available for free on all the places you could possibly listen to podcasts, and new episodes come out every Monday.
You can't just, to make a big YouTube audience and get good views on your videos, you can't just put them out every 2 months when you have a release. So that got me thinking, okay, cool. What could we do? And I had been watching a lot of like photography and video vloggers to really just to learn how to do my job. I did not come into marketing fully equipped. Like I was not fluent in mixing music. I did not know how to, I've hardly ever even operated a camera. Like I learned so much on the job, like an embarrassing amount on the job. And you can tell if you look back far enough. But I was watching these vlogs and I was like, Josh, so get this, there are these guys and their whole thing is just like, here's a topic and I'm just going to make these like kind of day in the life videos about their passion or whatever, like photography or video or whatever. And so he at the time was really getting into like teaching pedal history and stuff. And I was getting really sick of making low performing demo videos and like being like, man, other people make really good demo videos. Why can't we do something different? And so, you know, Josh would take a cell phone video of him playing a Big Muff and post it on Instagram, and it would get like 4 times the views of like a demo video that I would slave over for like months. And I was like, this is dumb. Let's combine our efforts and like take your thing for teaching and this concept of a vlog. And so I kind of was giving him references, like sending him videos, like this is kind of how we could do this. And at first he was just like filming stuff himself. So it's like, you know, we got the GoPro rig and we got our little DSLR or whatever, and got some lights and he would film it all himself and then give it to me and I would cut it down. And I was like, let's do one episode a week, which to this day, I'm like, why did you say once a week? Like, do you know what you're signing yourself up for? Yeah, no, it was like truly insane, a truly insane goal. so we started doing that, and eventually like we started working more together on the filming, and that was because Josh filmed an entire episode and forgot to like record the audio or something, and he's like never
Oh,
again.
no.
He was like never again. So then it like I started directing them more, and like we just through trial and error, like we just kept putting out episodes and kept making videos about these pedals and history and like all this stuff. And just through the process of doing it over and over and over again, we started figuring out, oh, cool. Like, what helps is if we go in with a script. That who would have thought being prepared would actually really help this process go well? Or, hey, let's actually start screwing lights into the ceiling so we don't have to move them every single time. And like,
Right.
and so it just kept building and building. And every year it got more and more intricate and complicated, to the point where we're like, okay, now we're like filming ourselves jamming, and I'm having to learn how to mix and like record now. And like everything was incremental. Like it wasn't like we came out of the gate and it's like I was really like fluent in the video world or in the mixing world. Like it was we built it up incrementally over time, to like what you see now. And yeah, so it was a long process of trial and error, and just kind of committing to go like, we're just going to put it out. Like we're just going to keep putting stuff out. And like every time we put it out, we would be able to like look back on it and not be able to change anything and be like, okay, I want to change this thing next time. And so yeah, it was a long process, but like the rate that we put stuff out, we learned quickly, despite how the whole arc of how we got to the JHS show.
Well, and then when I showed up to do the live, what was it? I don't know, 21 or something like that. I was like, I wonder what it's going to look like in there. Like, I know what it looks like aesthetically. I know it's got the pedals on the wall and everything, but I was so curious to see the rig, because I'm just one person, so it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't take much. But even at that time, I was still like, I don't know how to work a camera. I still barely know how to work a camera, like realistically. And because I was doing this audio only for years. The first time Josh came on, we didn't even, like, video calls weren't really a thing.
Right.
I think Skype kind of existed.
Yeah.
But we didn't record with that. We used an app called Ringer, and that was like audio only.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I wonder what this looks like. And I told a lot of people, and I came back, I was like, it's very impressive. Like, and I know it's the result of a lot of people's work over time.
Yeah, for sure.
But
really
seeing
is.
how it all flowed and how you guys all knew your roles, and like everything was pretty dialed. And I'm sure you're still tweaking things to this day.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah, no, we are, and that's a thing. Like, for us, ultimately, we're a pedal company first. It's a really weird. It's a really weird space we're in, because we're a pedal company first. So like ultimately our goal is to sell pedals.
of course.
So there's always this weird tension with like wanting to be like this killer YouTube channel and also producing awesome pedals. That's why we're all here in the first place. This whole museum doesn't exist without the like razor sharp production crew that we have, like it just doesn't exist. Like we don't get the JHS show without all the people who have like freaking busted their butts to get pedals out the door for people. And like, so we have this, even this year, like we're having to reevaluate the way we do everything. But I think that's important, because I think the thing that's kept the JHS show going is our ability to like adapt and to change and to assess where we're at and go like, yeah, man, like we might have to reinvent the wheel a couple times. And that's what this whole room is. This whole room is us reinventing the wheel until we've run out of room. You know what I mean? Like we've run out of freaking drywall to screw shelves into. So there's a whole aspect to the way that like we've developed things where it's like, yeah, it's like you kind of build a system, you build like a function, you divvy out people's responsibilities, you get really good at that, and then you kind of hit a point where you got to reassess, and then you do it. But now you have all this knowledge that you had and wisdom that you had. And so when it's kind of that thing, I don't know. I heard a thing that's like, I'm not a sports person, but I heard a thing that was like Tiger Woods would do this thing where he would reinvent his swing like every year or something. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, he would suck for like months. Like a guy who's like, yeah, hey dude, like don't change anything. You're really good at golf. He would change it and suck for like 6 months or to a year, but then you'd like be really versatile. So all of the adapting and changing has just made us more and more flexible. So our option, we feel like it's like there's more options, there's more ways to approach creating content, solving creative problems. So yeah.
Well, and as much as the whole business is based around obviously selling pedals, that's how it started, and that's the main thing. But I have to imagine, I mean, this seems like a dumb question even to ask, but like the success of the show has to have had a dramatic impact on your ability to do the base function of the business, which is to sell pedals, because now you have all these people who love the show and they can't wait to see the next episode. But also, when you do have a drop, you've got hundreds of thousands of people that are invested in the thing that you guys do. So I mean, it does feed each other.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's actually, even to this day, a little bit challenging for some companies to see how that can be a worthwhile investment of resources. But like every time I have that conversation with somebody, I'm like, look at JHS. I'm always just like, look at them. There's no way that doesn't help their business, at the end of the day.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it's hard because it's like, there's no silver bullet for any of this. Like, it's the JHS show works because JHS pedals works. And like, when we're, we still have to make cool pedals,
100%.
We could make like a bunch of amazing videos and then have like a really like, if we don't give the pedal side up, all of our effort, it's kind of like, well, we can't just be a YouTube channel. So it's like, it is.
Yeah, there's way too many people there for that.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, it's weird because it's always been a challenge to like, there's no direct metrics to say like, this episode caused this increase in sales or whatever. But I think like ultimately, like the thing I've taken away from it is like being able to offer another product to people beyond pedals. To me, it's like, that's like the way I kind of think of the show is like, we want to educate, we want to be a resource for people. We want to like, between buying pedals, it's like we want to have fun conversations with people about pedal history, about gear, and try to be an educational resource that does a good job of explaining, like how did this pedal come into existence, and like building communities and creating good experiences for people. So that, yeah, like while you're waiting for another JHS pedal to drop, we're still hanging out. We're not just hanging out. Like, we're not just hanging out once every couple months or whatever. So yeah, it's been a really great way to just like maintain connection with people for sure. And be able to like, establish a little community, and it's been extremely helpful. And just like a really great way to like be a part of the gear community and more than just like, here's some pedals,
Yeah, 100%. It is cool. And if even to this day, I know there are other entities that look at this and they try to do their own version of it, and there's other companies that have taken note. There still is only a handful of companies who've been able to manage the content side consistently and make awesome gear. It's really not easy. That's why there's not that many people that do it.
No,
some people can
really
do both for a while,
Yeah.
right? You can do it, but like keeping it up over years and years. I can tell you I don't have a pedal company to run.
Yeah, and it's still
and
hard.
it's still hard.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, strings are a little different, but I also have it's not my full-time thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to give you guys props for being able to consistently do both for so long, because
Yeah,
I know
thanks.
how difficult that is. That's really challenging.
Yeah, it is challenging, and like you said, like, yeah, there's a reason why it's not everybody's doing it. And I think sometimes I think it's hard when you, I don't know, like if I were to like consult some other company about it, like I'd be like, "Hey, you got to just find one thing that you can do consistently."
Mm-hmm.
And then find where your boundaries are. Like find what works and what doesn't work. But like I think that there's a little bit of a thing where it's like you got to come out of the gates just like, guns ablazing, like we're doing a full-time show and a podcast and all this stuff, and it's like that's like ambition is great, but like ambition that isn't tempered is going to just burn you out. So it's like
100%.
you got to like, it's like find some stuff that's like achievable for where you're at, and like find your own voice. And like, I think it takes like there's I kind of think of it in like this, like when we talk about JHS projects, it's like, is this a big, medium, or small budget? And that doesn't just mean money, that means time and energy. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, maybe you only have the ability, maybe you have this awesome idea, right? You have this like podcast idea and a YouTube video. It's like all, there are all these moving pieces. And you're just starting out and you're like, man, I want to do this. This seems like like intimidating or whatever. And it's like, hey, like, what's the most basic function of your idea? Like, what's the most, at its core, what is the idea? Take away all the flashy stuff that you want to do. What, like, at its core, maybe it's, I want to make videos about bands I love. Well, there's a small, medium, and large budget version of that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so it's like assess your idea and pick the version of that budget that you really feel like you can honestly execute, because you can always scale up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Over time. So it's like, sometimes the best move is just like start something and like don't try to kill yourself doing it. Like, find that base, that's just the spirit of what the idea is. And like, if that's a 1-minute video every week, like do that and you'll get really good at it and you'll learn how to communicate better. And then it's like, and then add to it. You know what I mean?
I think that's really good advice, no matter what endeavor we're talking
for
about.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think emphasizing what you said about it's not just money budget.
Mm-hmm.
That is important,
Mhm.
obvious. We only have so many resources to allocate to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But time is just as important. Like if you have $1 million to spend on every YouTube video like Mr. Beast, but
Yeah,
you
sure.
only have 5 minutes to work on it, it doesn't matter that you have $1 million, because you're
Yeah.
not going to get it done.
Well, yeah, I talked with Josh about this thing. I call it like, there was I don't remember, I won't name the company specifically. There was a drum company and they filmed a release of a new kit and they flew to a volcano and they filmed on top of a volcano.
Cool.
But the drums sounded really bad because you're on top of a volcano.
Sure.
And and I showed Josh this video, and I was, because we were talking about this project, and it was like, oh, we could do this crazy huge thing and go to this place and fly to this place, and I was like, what is the like core message of the thing, of the project, of the ad, of the piece of content, of the podcast? You going to a volcano, like it's honestly not impressive to people. And there's this aspect of like, what is the true like content and value you're bringing to people who are watching? People
Mhm.
people will choose a piece of content with high value over like trying to manipulate you with like a move that's like, oh cool, yeah, here's this thing, and like we went to the top of the Empire State Building, but I didn't tell you, but you didn't learn anything. You know what I mean? Or I don't know, there's just like this real thing where I think sometimes people think like big is better, like big and loud is better, and like being like super bombastic and stuff is better. And it's like that stuff is fine, like as long as the core of what you're making like is bringing something of value to people. And like that's what we do with the JHS show. That's like what we try to do. That's our core value, is like we want to like educate before we like do anything else. And like all the goofy stuff kind of falls in around it. Like
It's
and
entertainment.
it's also part of just like who we are. Like we're not going to be making like these overly serious videos or whatever anyway. Like we don't know how to really do that. I think the closest we ever got was like Ross documentary, but even that has like a bunch of goofy stuff in it too, you know? So anyway, yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, man.
We have crested the hour mark, and I've got a couple classic questions I like to wrap these up on. But before I do, I like to give the guests a chance to take the floor. You know, you're talking to a bunch of people right now. Do you got, shout out your grandma or plug your favorite, store or anything you want to say right now? The floor is yours to go ahead and plug away.
Yeah, my grandma is awesome. No, she really is. Do I have anything to plug? Well, I have a EP on Apple Music you can go listen to if you want to listen to some. If you want to listen to the like what School of Rock, August Rush, Once, all of those movies culminated into, like, I have an album. It's just my name. You can look it up on Apple Music. It's called Rocks in the Rain. That's cool. Yeah, you should, if you want to get into making music and writing songs, you should buy Jeff Tweedy's How to Write One Song. That book is incredible. That's it. There's two things for you. My grandma, my EP, and that book.
All right. I like it. Shout out Nick's grandma first and foremost. That's what I got out of that message for sure. But yeah, I'll put the links to where you can find the music on Apple and Spotify in the show notes for all the audio listeners. So you can find that nice and easy. All right, here we go. Final questions. Here we go. This is going to be a tough one, I feel like. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
My favorite Boss pedal. Oh, well, it's great because there's literally a wall full of every single Boss pedal right here. I feel like the first thing that's popping into my head is the Slicer.
The Slicer's been a popular one.
That one's a cool one. It's weird, and I don't really see it a whole lot. And I just think it's, I think it's a weird one, and I like that one a lot. Yeah, that's my answer.
The Slicer?
Yeah.
All right. I like that. That's solid. Next question. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Ooh, my favorite kind of pizza. I like kind of the, we have a place here called Buffalo State that's really good. They kind of do like the New York style pizza. And I've been really into like the New York style pizza with like hot honey on it. That's really good. Fun. I thought it was weird. Like people were putting honey on pizza and I was like, that's dumb. And then I did it and I was like, that's not dumb.
It's not dumb.
It's not dumb. It's cool. And it tastes good.
I had it at the place. The first time I had it was actually at the place, as far as I know, that popularized it in New York City called Roberta's.
Okay.
I had just gotten done at the Fear the Riff Festival.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. And my wife and I were starving, and we waited in line for way too long at Roberta's. And by the time that bee sting pizza came out, my life had changed forever.
Dude, there is nothing. Honestly, there is nothing better than being so hungry and then eating a piece of like certain food. There's certain food where it's like, yeah, whatever. But like, there's something about being extra hungry and then just ripping into some pizza. It's really, it's an incredible thing.
It is. It's my favorite thing. I love it. I'm going to do it later today. I'm pretty sure.
You should.
Yeah.
I approve.
But no, that extra hungry factor, And I think it's the fact that pizza is so calorically dense.
Yeah.
So you're just getting it. You're getting that hunger satisfied in the most
right.
ridiculous way.
Yeah.
You know?
And the hungrier you are, the better the worst kind of pizza tastes.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah, Totino's suddenly becomes gourmet.
Yeah. Like there's certain foods you can't really pull that off. It's like no matter how hungry I am, a bad version of fill in the blank is not good. But with pizza, it's like if you're starving, you could have like the bottom of the barrel garbage and be like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I need this in my belly right now.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll see what kind of nonsense we can get into on Patreon. How's that go for you?
Heck yeah, sounds good, man.
All right, everybody. For Nick, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Mike Wiebe, and I'm the singer in a band called the Riverboat Gamblers.
And I'm Zach Blair. I play guitar in a band called Rise Against. Mike and I also have a band called the Draculas, and we also have this great, amazing new podcast called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah, each week we're going to ask ourselves and we're going to ask our guests what 3 favorite things they are into at that moment or in their entire lives. And then we're either going to agree with them or we're going to make fun of them. And you're going to listen to it and you're going to like it, or we will make fun of you. How about that? I just flipped it on you, the person listening to this right now. But we're going to do it every week here on the Sound Talent Network. Once again, it's called Zach and Mike Make 3.
Yeah.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.